Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Maine, what the hell's going on out there? Listen, I understand that you guys suffered through a horrific mass shooting last October in Lewiston, Maine. I understand that your state legislature has gotten back into session and is working feverishly to kind of come up with ways in which they believe that they will save lives. We're going to talk today about three pieces of legislation, one of which I am deeply concerned because it takes a piece of legislation that we've been quite complimentary of Maine about and turns it into an absolute atrocious piece of legislation. So today, let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about Maine loses its mind and goes full civilian disarmament. Okay, Maine, here's what we're talking about today. We're talking about SB 953. This is your governor's firearms omnibus bill, and there are at least three measures that will be advancing back to your governor's desk for consideration. I am assuming that your governor will assign each and every one of them, two of which are problematic to some degree. The third one, however, is absolutely atrocious and the one that's got me the most spun up. Let's get through the two easy ones, okay? There will now be, once this law goes into effect, a 72-hour waiting period on the purchase of all firearms. So even if your background check comes back instantly, you're good to go. You can come back and pick that firearm up in 72 hours. There does not appear to be a platform limitation, so whether you're buying a handgun, rifle, semi-automatic rifle, shotgun, it doesn't appear to matter at all. You will all be waiting 72 hours before you can actually take possession of that firearm. The other piece of legislation is a state ban on bump stocks. I'm not certain exactly how the state of Maine actually defines automatic weapons, but if they have done it based upon a rate of fire, similar to how we did it out here in Washington State, then a bump stock ban becomes very plausible if your definition is based on rate of fire. If your definition is based upon function of a trigger, as we know, and the ATF is finding out the hard way, that is not the best way to do it. Okay, so those are the two easier pieces of legislation. Now, the third one I want to talk to you about is your new red flag laws. Now, let's go back in our time machine. Back in October 25th of last year, there was a horrific shooting, mass shooting in Lewiston, Maine. It was perpetrated at the hands of a gentleman named Robert Card, okay? Shortly thereafter, all the mainstream media was screaming bloody murder, that Maine didn't have red flag laws, and that's why this shooting occurred. I decided to go do my own independent research and discovered that, in fact, Maine did not have red flag laws. Rather, they had something far better than that. They had what was called yellow flag laws. And the difference is that on a yellow flag law, an individual would be allowed to seek help from a mental health professional who could conduct an evaluation. That evaluation could be submitted to the court to determine whether or not this person should truly be disarmed. And the standard of proof by which the state of Maine would have to achieve in order to disarm an individual was not preponderance of evidence. It was rather clear and convincing evidence, a much higher burden. We had done this video at that time where I said, hey, listen, if you're going to have a statute that disarms individuals on a civil basis, which again, I am not, promoting such statute, but if one were to exist, Maine's was a lot closer to being constitutionally sound than most red flag laws we see in other states. The problem, of course, was that had any one of the dozens and dozens of individuals who had come into contact with Mr. Card prior to that shooting just ever said something, got themselves involved, yellow flag laws would have kicked in and Mr. Card would have been disarmed and this shooting likely would have been prevented. So it wasn't the lack of Maine red flag laws that allowed this shooting to occur. It was a lack of individuals being willing to get themselves involved and lack of the state of Maine's ability to enforce their laws that allowed this shooting to occur. The problem now, of course, is the Maine state legislature has gone back into session and they have radically rewritten it. And when I say radically rewritten, I mean that, Maine, you went from a law that actually we were quite complimentary of to now you are about to have absolutely the worst, let me say this again, the worst red flag law in America. Because if an individual is subject to a petition for a red flag law, they will be taken into custody for a mental health evaluation. This is how the law will read. The assessment required by this subsection must be performed while the person being assessed remains in protective custody, except that the assessment may be performed within 24 hours after the person is released from custody if 1, the protective custody stemmed from a law enforcement officer's probable cause to believe the person was mentally ill and presented a likelihood of serious harm because the person possesses, controls, or may acquire a dangerous weapon, and an assessment under Section 3863 has occurred. Okay, so let me try to have you get your head around this. If you are subjected to a red flag petition, you will be taken into protective custody. And oh, by the way, if you're not willing to go, that's okay. They will just get a warrant and arrest you anyways. Don't believe me? Here's what else the law says. If a law enforcement officer is unable to take a person into protective custody to conduct assessment under this section, the law enforcement officer may apply for a protective custody warrant. The officer must submit an affidavit of probable cause for a protective custody warrant to a justice of the Superior Court or a judge of the district court. The justice or judge shall issue a protective custody warrant and promptly transmit that warrant to the officer for execution upon finding that the affidavit under this subsection is sufficient to establish. Okay, and I want you to understand now that a judge is going to issue a warrant for your arrest in Maine if there is probable cause to believe, A, probable cause to believe that the person is mentally ill and due to that condition presents a likelihood of serious harm. B, probable cause to believe that the person possesses, controls, or may acquire a dangerous weapon. And C, that the officer has made reasonable attempts to take the person into custody without a warrant. Now, if you go back and you look at the criteria for which that affidavit must contain, you will notice one thing that is absent from it, which is any allegation of criminal activity. Oh, there's allegations that they may possess weapons. That's not unlawful in most cases. There is allegations that they may be mentally ill. That's not unlawful in any occasion. It certainly can create problems, but in and of itself is not unlawful. But that standing alone will allow a judge in Maine to order a person taken into custody. And let us remember, this will be based upon the allegations of another private individual. So the bottom line, Maine, is that you have taken a really good piece of legislation, one that we actually had said should be a model for other states, and turned it into an absolute abomination of literally every constitutional protection that a citizen should have. We're going to go ahead and link up all the legislation down below so that you all can geek out on it for yourself. We will keep you posted as to when the governor signs and when the effective dates of this legislation will occur. If you guys got ideas for videos that Washington gun law should be doing, check it out. We created this link right there where you can go and give us some ideas. And I'm going to tell you, some of the best videos we ever did actually weren't our ideas to begin with. Listen, if you got any other questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now. If you don't, that's okay. That information is down there in the description box as well. And then finally, let's everyone remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.